Now that the dust has settled, I have finally really started to sit down and play with these heat weapons. And for those that don't know, this is an entirely different weapon type within Destiny that was added in Renegades. And for the longest time, I would say every weapon we have gotten over the course of many years have been relatively the same. Sure, we've gotten things like rocket-assisted pulse rifles, rocket-assisted sidearms, or even the most recent burst fire submachine gun peculiar charm. But when you shoot those weapons, it still feels like a Destiny weapon. Heat weapons, though, they're different. And even though third iteration was really the first one that started it all back in Edge of Fate, the legendary heat weapons we have in Renegades is starting to replace everything in my arsenal, which takes us to High Tyrant. Guys, I took this weapon out for a spin, and I could not believe just how powerful this pulse rifle is. A Void 540 round per minute balanced heat pulse rifle. And I know many of us just look at the 540 and go, okay, so it's a 540 pulse. And I immediately thought when I first saw the weapon that maybe this is just like Horus Lease or maybe a grid skipper. This is where I was so wrong. You see, sometimes, guys, it literally takes us bringing a weapon, putting it in our hands, and shooting it to understand what I'm about to tell you. These heat weapons, they're different. And I mean a good different. They are arguably some of the most satisfying weapons to shoot in Destiny, and in a lot of ways are replacing everything in my vault. Now, we've talked about the different heat archetypes. There's actually two, but High Tyrant here falls within the balanced heat archetype, which states increased damage versus powerful combatants, very low heat generated. Reload press to vent heat from the weapon. Overheating forces a sustained vent. Manually venting at very high heat greatly increases vent speed. Now, there's a lot happening here outside of just the subjective feel of the weapon. Vent is very much like reload, but there is an optimal way to do it, a sweet spot, if you will, to get the fast reload in every single time. But also intrinsically, this weapon deals increased damage against powerful combatants. For instance, when testing this in the shooting range, we're dealing 34 damage per crit against Carl with a 1 mag DPS of 316. Compare this to a standard rapid fire pulse rifle, such as say Horus Lease, it hits 30 damage per crit and a 1 mag DPS of 282. That one extra damage is actually pretty nice. We're talking roughly a 13% increased damage per shot simply because this is a heat weapon. And even though the DPS here on High Tyrant may not be as high as the Strand version called All or Nothing, which yes, we'll be talking about soon, there's still great trade-offs between the both of these. All or Nothing has some decent PvE perks, but definitely leans a bit more to the PvP side. High Tyrant, on the other hand, is loaded with PvE perks, and it's a balanced heat weapon. So it's able to build less heat. It can also be fired for longer. And to be quite honest with you guys, it is one of the best filling weapons I've used this season inside of PvP. And I really was not expecting this at all. I was expecting to go in there, grab a couple clips, talk about how it's great in PvE, and then kind of write it off for PvP. It's not that it doesn't have good perks or good traits. It's just that I've already farmed for my shiny God Roll Horus Lease. To me, that should be the clear PvP winner, but it's not. In every category, High Tyrant outperforms multiple rapid fire pulse rifles inside of PvP. Whether I was playing 6v6 or trials, I felt like the weapon just didn't miss. And what's crazy is the role I'm playing with ain't even the God Roll. I will say though, guys, part of the reason why this pulse rifle felt so good in PvP is because rapid fires as a whole received a small buff at the beginning of Renegades. Base damage was increased from 15 to 15.5, and crit damage was increased from 27.75 to 27.9. So let's dive into these perks, guys. Let's talk what's happening here on this weapon and why you should consider High Tyrant, the dungeon pulse rifle from Equilibrium. Now, for those that have not done the dungeon, we have an entire guide on it. You can check it out down below. Best way to get this weapon is literally unlock attunements. That will make life so much easier. And you can even farm a 4 feet of this dungeon in the final encounter, get 2 drops per run, and lock in that God Roll. Granted, easier said than done, but that is the most optimal path. Now, with that out of the way, though, let's start talking perks. In our third column, we have Repulsor Brace, Loose Change, Delicate Tuning, Cooling Baubles, Rapid Hits, Destabilizing Rounds, and Demolitions. In our fourth column, we have Master of Arms, Withering Gaze, Thermal Atomization, Demoralize, Meganeura, Headseeker, and Frenzy. Let me touch on some of these new perks real quick. We've got Cooling Baubles right here, which states that collecting elemental pickups or an orb of power reduces heat. It's a pretty straightforward perk, but a very nice perk nonetheless, especially on heat weapons. Essentially, every orb of power or elemental pickup you collect is going to remove 35% of the heat on your weapon, which is significant. Granted, there is more lethal options in this column, but definitely not a bad option here if you're generating lots of orbs with a siphon mod, for example, or a variety of elemental pickups. Now, the other new perk in this column is Delicate Tuning, one of my favorite perks primarily for PvP. While at low heat, this weapon has improved range, handling, and accuracy. Now, I really like this perk. It's essentially essentially like tap the trigger, or maybe even something like opening shot. But you can see here at the testing range, guys, it increases our range by around 2 extra meters when we are at low heat. Now, according to the Destiny data compendium, these benefits are going to scale from 0% to 50% heat. And for this weapon specifically, we're able to take advantage of those 2 extra meters until about 16% of the heat meter. Guys, that is crazy. Yes, opening shot is a great perk. It gives you a massive boost to your range as well as your accuracy, but keep in mind that's for 1 shot. Delicate tuning here is giving you massive benefits all the way to 50%, but even to 16%. The fact that you're able to maintain those 2 extra meters is really all I need to secure my gunfights. You can see in all these encounters right here, guys, a lot of my gunfights, majority of it stays underneath that 15%. It's not to say we don't go above that, but for the most part, you're getting the best version of the weapon for an extended amount of time at the beginning of those gunfights. And if you land all your shots, it will sustain through that entire optimal time to kill. I cannot express just how good delicate tuning is. Now, another perk that's also present in that 3rd column, specifically for my PvE players, is Destabilizing Rounds. Defeating a target creates a void burst. Hitting other targets with this burst makes them volatile and grants you volatile rounds for a short duration. One of the best perks in the game, guys, when it comes to clearing ads. Destabilizing Rounds got a buff a number of seasons ago, and it shreds, guys. And with this being present in the 3rd column, well, it opens up a lot of options in that 4th column for your more lethal perks. Yes, you've got Repulsor Brace here, which is good for survivability, and perhaps if you're getting volatile in other ways, maybe you would go Repulsor Brace, but for the rest of us, Destabilizing Rounds is the way to go, which takes us to that 4th column. First, I'm going to talk about Thermal Atomization. It reads that while at high heat, this weapon deals increased damage and causes targets to explode when defeated. Now, this works very similar to high impact reserves, as once you cross 50% heat threshold, your damage is going to increase up until you reach 100% heat. Now, for our pulse rifle here, at base, we were hitting Carl for 34 damage to the head, up to a max of 40 damage, giving us around a 17% increase. But the thing that really sets us apart from high impact reserves is the fact that when you do defeat targets, it causes them to explode. You see us testing it right here, guys, against the red bar enemies. That explosion right here is dealing a max of 403 damage. Fortunately, though, the explosion doesn't seem to get increased based on how high your heat meter is, meaning as long as you're above that 50%, it will be capped at a certain amount of damage. It doesn't scale based on your heat output. Would have been a nice touch, but even with mods like Kill Shot, it seems like Bungie's really putting a cap on these, which I do believe is intentional. Now, the other new perk to mention is Meganeura. Not really a new perk, but a returning perk. This was the perk found on Oxygen SR3 back in the day when it was our pinnacle weapon. It reads that precision final blows creates an elemental damage explosion that deals more damage based on the number of rapid precision hits dealt beforehand. Now, how this perk works is that each precision hit you land grants a stack of Meganeura for 4 seconds, up to a max of 3 stacks. Then when you get that precision kill, that enemy will explode and then deal damage over a 7.5 meter radius. Now, with just a single stack of Meganeura, our explosion was dealing 386 damage against a red bar enemy. 2 stacks, it jumps up 40% to 541. 3 stacks, it jumps up 67% to 647. So pretty substantial. The perk is essentially Dragonfly, but on crack. Granted, you need to land precision hits, but on a pulse rifle especially, it's really good considering every shot of a burst will contribute to a stack of Meganeura. So instead of it being 3 individual bursts, here, you just gotta land 1 burst and boom, you've got 3 stacks of Meganeura. Now, in terms of void synergy in that 4th column, you do have things like Demoralize, Withering Gaze. Demoralize allows precision final blows to weaken nearby targets within that 7 meter radius. There's a bit of a small cooldown of about a second with the enhanced version. And then you have Withering Gaze, which allows you to weaken a target that you're actually aiming down sights for. So essentially, if you're looking down at a target for 1.4 seconds, it will then apply weaken to that target. And I would say both of these perks are good, with each serving different purposes. Outside of that, you have your more typical perks like Frenzy. And then for my PvP players, I really like Headseeker on this thing. Again, Headseeker used to be a dead perk way back when, but that little bit of extra forgiveness when you happen to land a body shot is so nice because it increases that crit damage. And the enhanced version of Headseeker also gives us a little more stability, and Headseeker itself increases aim assist for the weapon. And that was essentially the role I was using in PvP, was Headseeker with delicate tuning, was boosting my range up a bit more, and I just felt like the weapon was so snappy. Like I literally felt like I was shooting through walls at times. It was just grabbing headshots and being such a bullet hose. And keep in mind, this is coming off of me using Horus Lease for a couple days, and I can tell you right now, High Tyrant beats Horus Lease in every way. Now let's talk about this origin trait. This is called Imperial Allegiance. It says that being near allies grants increased cooling or charge rate and increased damage while at high heat or low guard energy. Now for this origin trait, you're going to gain a stack of Imperial Allegiance for each nearby ally within 15 meters, up to a max of 3 stacks, with the benefits starting to kick in once you reach 50% heat generated. Now in terms of the damage increase, at base we were hitting for 34 damage, but with ×1, our damage goes up to 36, so roughly a 6% increase. ×2, it goes to 37, a 9% increase. ×3 goes to 38, roughly 11.7% increase. Keep in mind, you're also getting an increased cooling efficiency, which is not really something you're going to notice too much at a single stack, but at 3 stacks, you can see them side by side here, and it cools a decent amount faster. I got both up to 96% heat generated, and then let them cool on their own. And you can see here that when we finished cooling with ×3 Imperial Allegiance, our base cooling was still at 10%. I think it's a pretty good origin trait, and with that increase in damage there, that's going to be something more noticeable on weapons that you're going to be doing DPS with. You can imagine popping things like a well and just unloading on a boss. Hell, just giving you free 11 to 12% more damage is absolutely amazing. The origin traits for the dungeon weapons have been really good over the past year. Now with all that out of the way, guys, what is the God Roll? Honestly, Destabilizing Rounds Meganeura is my favorite. That's the way to go. You've got Volatile, you're easily getting Meganeura, you're spreading Volatile all over the place. It is a ton of kabloomies. It's extremely aggressive. The Destabilizing Rounds is already really good, and even though primary weapons aren't necessarily in the best state right now, Rapid Pulse Rifles are actually pretty solid. And this trait combination, in my opinion, is the best on this weapon. Now, I will say Meganeura itself doesn't seem to spread Volatile further, so it's still within that 7-meter explosion. We even tried lining up a bunch of ads to see if Volatile could chain or continue spreading, but that's not the case. The other thing I would mention is that if you aren't consistently landing precision hits, Meganeura is kind of a waste. So if you're a no thumb Andy, might want to look to maybe something like Destabilizing and Frenzy. Outside of that, guys, you've got some pretty good void synergies like Repulsor Brace, Demoralize. You could do Destabilizing plus Demoralize. And considering we get multiple traits per column, I would say my tier 5 God Roll suggestion would be Repulsor Brace, Destabilizing Rounds, Cooling Baubles in that 3rd column, and Demoralize, Meganeura, and Frenzy in that 4th column. Again, that's the PvE roll. Now, part of the God Roll is also going to be the battery perk that you choose, because yes, this has batteries instead of magazines. We have Light Heat Sink, which increases handling and vent speed, Enhanced Heat Sink, which reduces the amount of heat you generate and slightly increases vent speed. Then we have our heat sinks, which slightly alter our damage. For instance, Overclocked Heat Sink slightly increases damage in exchange for reduced cooling. In our testing, this was roughly a 3% increase. As you see, our crit damage going from 34 to 35. Nothing too crazy there. I would say for the reduced cooling, it's not a major difference, but in the side-by-side, you can clearly see it ticking down slower with Overclocked Heat Sink. There's also Accelerated Heat Sink, which slightly reduces damage in exchange for improved cooling. Interestingly enough, against Carl in the shooting range, our damage numbers stayed exactly the same, which means it's probably fractional or maybe even a rounding issue. There may be a decrease here, but we know how the numbers are in the game. Now, in terms of the increased cooling side-by-side here, again, you can see in this clip with Accelerated Heat Sink, it cools down faster, and it actually surpasses the other battery, even though it has more heat built up. Don't get too hung up on the percentage here, guys. Just look at how much it decreases in comparison. I would say out of all these batteries, they're all pretty good, but especially Accelerated Heat Sink, I think that may be the way to go. Now, this takes us to PvP. PvP is pretty straightforward for me, guys. I tried this delicate tuning out with Headseeker, and it's phenomenal. As for what else to pair with it, I think things like Projection Fuse is really nice, and I had Extended Barrel on mine, which did give me +10 there to my recoil direction. And the reason why that was good is because I'm able to throw on Enhanced Counterbalance, which gives me another 35 recoil direction, essentially almost maxing out my recoil direction at 98. I felt really good. And even though I know some people are going to say, but Cross, why not arrange Masterwork? Why not give yourself a little more reach? That's where Delicate Tuning comes in. When you have perks like Delicate Tuning, it's tacking on those 2 extra meters. And even though High Tyrant, just like Horus Lease or Grid Skipper or other rapid fire pulse rifles, has the same TTK value of 0.8 seconds at 8 crits 1 body, I felt like with Delicate Tuning, I felt the accuracy pull and I felt the reach. Hell, my 74 range roll here doesn't begin to see fall off until 39 meters. That's crazy for a rapid fire fusion. Keep in mind, like the most amped Horus Lease with all the range on it starts to experience damage fall off at 36.25 meters. So that reach is what's so noticeable on this weapon. And yes, Delicate Tuning is a big reason for that. And considering most of your gunfights will be concluded before Delicate Tuning even drops off, you can see why this perk is S tier. What I will say about heat weapons, guys, is that they are becoming some of my favorite weapons in the game. I am in love with how this weapon weapon felt in both PvE and PvP, and it's starting to shift the meta for me because this feels like a different kind of weapon in Destiny. It's one of those things that kind of reestablishes itself inside of Destiny. It's like, damn, it feels good to shoot a weapon in this game. And we've felt that for a long time, but things have gotten a bit samey in some cases. I feel like heat weapons is that mix-up we were desperately needing. And right now, guys, High Tyrant is an S-tier weapon that you should definitely consider. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
Slap that like button like your mama told you right.